Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, The Story Ain't Over. Today I am bringing you yet another challenge type video. So I've done a couple of these before and you guys seem to really enjoy them. So I want to do another video where I test out a certain author, a certain genre, a certain someone's taste. I've done this twice before. I tested book talk recommendations once before, and then I also tested Kayla from Books and Lala's Taste in Books. Today, as you can probably tell from the title and thumbnail of this video, I'm going to be testing out whether Sally Rooney is worth the hype. So I feel like Sally Rooney is like a really popular author on BookTube and also on TikTok. I feel like I've seen her around a lot, and also on Bookstagram. But she is one of those like literary authors that everyone seems to love, and I've heard many people recommend her books to me, whether that's in real life, like other coworkers or people I know in real life, or people on the internet. I definitely don't want to take credit for this idea because I've seen other booktubers do this video before testing whether Sally Rooney is worth the hype. So I want to try it out for myself because I feel like Sally Rooney definitely isn't the type of genre or author that I would usually pick up on a regular basis. You guys know I'm pretty committed to like picking up books by BIPOC authors. She is a white Irish author, but I have been trying to get into more literary and also romancy books, so I feel like she's a good sort of intersection of a couple different tastes that I want to try out. Aside from the fact that I know she doesn't use quotation marks for dialogue in her books, I don't know much else about her books or her writing, so I feel like this will be an interesting experiment to try out. So as you can see, I'm holding up 3 of her books, and I'm pretty sure these are her only 3 novels. So the first one is Conversations with Friends. Second one is Normal People, which so many people are always raving about. And then most recently, she had a release called Beautiful World, Where Are You? So in today's video, I'm going to be reading all 3 of her novels. I'm really excited to try these out, also because they're like very short novels. All of them are about 300 pages or less. So I feel like this is going to be a little bit of a cakewalk compared to some of the other challenge videos I've done, especially to the recent video I did where I tested Bridgerton books, because each of those is like 400 or 500 pages, and it was definitely a very long few weeks where I was reading those. But yes, that is what is on the docket. I'm going to review each of these for you in this video and tell you my extended thoughts. But before we get into the first book, Conversations with Friends, which ironically features a lot of wine drinking and a lot of parties, I want to tell you a little bit about the sponsor of today's video, which is Bright Cellars. So I mentioned wine just now and parties. Well, Bright Cellars is uniquely a wine subscription service, which is something that I swear I've never heard of before and I think is so awesome. Bright Cellars is a wine subscription service that was founded by 2 MIT grads who wanted to help people find wines they love. Unlike the characters of Conversations with Friends, I've never really been a wine drinker, partly because I've never really found the perfect wine that matches my taste. But it seems like Bright Cellars is the perfect service to help me find the wine I'm gonna love. The way it works is that they have a 30-second quiz online with 7 questions that you answer. And from there, an algorithm they've built creates a unique taste profile based on your answers, and they send you wines that you're guaranteed to love. And so because of this process, if you ever receive a wine that you don't end up liking, you'll actually get a replacement wine sent to you for free in your next box. The service is super convenient. They ship everything straight to your door, so you don't have to go searching around for your favorite wine. And the thing I probably love the most about this entire subscription service is that each box and each wine comes with its own educational card. Each card outlines the tasting notes of the wine, suggested pairings, best serving temperature, and also the origin. These cards will definitely come in handy when you're trying to impress your friends at your next party, much like the characters in Conversations with Friends. And beyond all of that, Bright Cellars is really committed to sustainability. They offer a variety of selections beyond the grocery store wines, including sustainable varietals and biodynamic wines. All of their packaging is recyclable, plastic-free, and the smallest carbon footprint in the industry. So with that said, I definitely think you guys should check out Bright Cellars, whether you're into wine or just getting into wine. Unfortunately, the service is US only, so just be aware of that. But today I also have a really awesome exclusive offer. Bright Cellars is giving my subscribers 50% off their first 6-bottle box. That's an insane deal and just a really awesome package for a service that just curates everything to your needs. It's definitely a deal you don't want to miss out on, so go check out the link in my description, support my channel, and take that quiz to start your wine subscription today. Thank you so much to Bright Cellars for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to my thoughts on Sally Rooney. All right, let's go. Conversations with Friends. So this is the first of Sally Rooney's books that I decided to pick up, partly because this was the first of her books that was published, I believe. I might be wrong. I think that's what I came up with. And I feel like from what I have seen around the internet, this is everyone's least favorite of her 3 books. So I can't compare this with her other books, but so far I feel like this was pretty much a hit for me. but also there were some things that I absolutely hated about it. So this is sort of like a love-hate relationship with this book so far. Off the bat, I am already loving Sally Rooney's writing. I know so many people have told me before that she's very sparse, like direct writing, but has some really profound quotes and some really deep thoughts that sort of come up from the characters, and I definitely feel like that was true. There were so many parts of this book where I was like, oh my god, that's like beautiful, or like the quote was just magnificent and I had to underline it or tab it on my copy. There was one quote in particular that I really loved, and it goes, "She pronounced Liesel's name without any particular love or hatred, just a girl she had known, and for months afterward, maybe forever afterward, I was afraid that someday she would say my name that way too." Which broke me. There are so many aspects to this book that were so interesting, and sort of the complicated relationship dynamics as well were just fantastic. And I feel like the deep look into the main character's psyche was fascinating as well. Part of what I didn't like about this book was like the very pretentious characters and sort of their privileged lives and how they're whining about them, but I recognize that these are just the characters, and I appreciated the look into their psyches and how they operated. I loved the dialogue in this book, and just the way that Sally Rooney writes her dialogue, because it always feels like there's so much tension filled into the conversation, even if they're talking about something really mundane. Another thing I loved was that there was some really dramatic and crazed moments, but also lots of very regular everyday moments as well. I wasn't particularly in love with like the overall storyline of this one with the whole affair thing. This is definitely like the storyline that I imagine when I'm thinking about like those literary books that I don't like, where it's just like privileged white people and getting into affairs, and like that is what I thought adult literary novels were, and this is definitely like the epitome of what I thought they would be. But I did like how the main character was quite young, and sort of the psychological space that she is in throughout this book was really fascinating. There's definitely a lot of like mental health issues going on in this book. I saw one review online that said that this book was like reading the diary of your mentally ill friend and like not knowing what to do, and I totally agree with that. Like that was spot on. But it was also just like filled with these really profound sort of ruminations on what it means to be alive, I feel like, which I really appreciated. Overall, it was like a really quick read as well for me, and I felt myself sucked into the story. I absolutely hated that Sally Rooney doesn't use quotation marks, but I eventually got used to it and I just sort of rolled with it. It also made me like pay attention really carefully to what was being said, I feel like. And this is honestly the first book in a while that I hadn't read through audiobook, and I was like physically reading it. It was actually a really nice experience because I feel like I felt the story a lot more, and I really felt the words, I guess. Seeing them on the page made me absorb the words in a way that I feel like I don't when I'm listening to audiobooks, so that was quite interesting. But yeah, there's just like so many lines that I underlined, that I tabbed, that I found so fascinating, and I feel like the characters were just like so dramatic and also making terrible decisions like all the time, which was like watching a train wreck happen. It's like one of those inevitable things that you just can't stop watching. I know people have issues with the ending of this one. It's quite ambiguous and also leaves you on sort of like a cliffhanger and sort of shows the characters regressing back into their old ways, but I felt like that was a really great statement, I guess. I personally would have loved things to happen a certain way, and we sort of get that ending, and then we get this extra chapter at the end where the characters sort of regress back into their old habits, which I found interesting and sort of speaks to the sort of bleak outlook that the author was trying to portray. One thing I found really funny about this was that there was quite a few parts that revolved around like publishing and the publishing industry and sort of how it works, and it was just funny seeing like the main character, you know, at this like internship at a literary agency, but like the privilege that she has to just be like, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't really care kind of thing, but also how there's like so many people in her life who are just like willing to drop everything to help her out, and I'm like, is this really realistic, or is it just because you're a young white girl? Another thing that I found quite interesting was that parts of my life have like mirrored parts of this book. Like I saw a lot of myself in this, which I didn't expect. So that was quite interesting, but I think the main character's sort of unhinged nature and her psyche was like also quite disturbing to read as well. She's going through a lot, and like I feel for her, but I feel like she puts herself in some of these situations, so I'm like, I can't feel completely bad for you, but I do recognize that you are really going through something and have some serious issues with your mental health as well. But yeah, I overall really enjoyed this unexpectedly, I think. While I hated some of the characters and the way they act, I loved the story overall and how it was told, and the deep look into the characters as well, and their actions. And I also loved some of the relationships that were going on and the dynamics there as well. I found the relationship between Bobby and Francis so interesting and so fascinating, and sort of how it's slightly repressed through most of the book and comes out much later on. I personally didn't love Nick, but I found the idea that he was so passive that it granted him power to be really, really interesting as well. Melissa was also an interesting character. She's meant to be slightly misunderstood, but she has a lot of parallels to our main character as well. And overall, it was just a really interesting read. I don't know what else I want to say about this because I just don't know how I feel. Like, I partly hated it, but I partly also loved it. But I think it's definitely more on the love side. Like, I loved the way it was written, and I think the experience of reading the words on the page was just so fantastic. So it's definitely like one of my more favorite books that I've read this year. And yeah, I feel like I related to this in a weird way. I used to do spoken word as well back when I was in university and high school. And so that was like a weird sort of connection that I had to the main character, and also like the writing aspects I found really interesting. The entire time while I was reading this though, I was wondering if it was slightly autobiographical to the author's life in any way, because it just seemed like the type of story that was drawn from personal experience. So yeah, just based off of this book, I feel like I definitely like Sally Rooney. I can't say that I don't. I don't particularly love her pretentious characters, but I do love her writing style and her look into those complicated characters. I can't say without a doubt though that like this is definitely the type of book that I wouldn't usually like or want to pick up. And so the concept of it is something I don't like, but the way it was written is what got me. If you have read Conversations with Friends, I would love to hear what you thought of it personally and how you rank it in terms of Sally Rooney's books. And also if you have a favorite line from this book, let me know, because I feel like there's so many and I underlined so many, and I think I loved the one that I read out to you guys, but I feel like there were so many others as well. So with this book done, I'm moving in chronological publishing order towards Normal People, and I have high expectations for this one because everyone just keeps talking about how this book is amazing, so I'm hoping it lives up, and I'm hoping I at least think it's better than Conversations with Friends, because the way y'all have been talking about it is as if it's like freaking cake or something, so I'm excited. Hello friends, time to talk about Normal People. So this one is definitely the most hyped, I feel like, of Sally Rooney's books. There's an adaptation for it. I have not seen it yet, but based on how I feel after reading this, I am not particularly interested in watching it. I have many, many thoughts, and most of them are not good about this book, and I'm quite surprised, honestly. After having read Conversations with Friends and sort of seeing reviews on it and Sally Rooney's books in general, most people, from what I could see at least, preferred Normal People over Conversations with Friends. But having read this and also talking with a few of my friends who've read her books, including Hannah from A Clockwork Reader, who has also read her books, I started to realize that although I had sort of a love-hate relationship with Conversations with Friends, I actually really, really did love that book. But this one, I can quite honestly say that I hated. I would probably give it a 1 or 2 stars, maybe 2. I think there were some redeemable characters, but the main characters, Connell and Marianne, were just so insufferable, in my opinion at least, and I'll get into that a little bit because I have so many thoughts. So first off, the things that I liked, I did really like Connell's mother, Lorraine. I think she was such a sweet character. I think she was the most level-headed character in the entire book. I also really liked Marianne's friend, Joanna. She doesn't appear for very long in the book, but I think she was a great character and also had some opposing opinions to what Marianne was saying, especially when they're discussing like work and what it means to be working and like money versus, you know, being able to choose your time and sort of this like capitalist mindset. But aside from that, I didn't love much about this. I think the one thing I may have liked was sort of how Marianne and Connell were very different with each other than they were with other people, and they sort of brought out this true nature to each other. But that is like a very small aspect to this. I feel like there were so many other glaring issues to this book, in my opinion at least, that I just really, really did not enjoy this book. I found myself getting so bored by like the second half, and I just wanted the book to finish because I didn't see a point in it continuing. There was nothing really going on, and I didn't really like the characters, and I was just sort of slogging through it trying to finish the book. One thing in particular while reading this I noticed was that it feels a lot like Conversations with Friends. There are scenes in this book that are almost copies from Conversations with Friends, but with slightly different variations, and it felt like they were just talking about the same things or same sort of ideas, but in a different way, and I didn't feel like they were very distinctive from Conversations Conversations with Friends. Another problem that I had with this, and also with Conversations with Friends, partly, is just the way that the main character is this like privileged white girl, and it's like hard to feel sorry for her because she has privilege that many people do not, and it's like she's whining about these problems, and obviously like these are valid problems, but I fail to have sympathy for her. I felt a lot more sympathy for Connell as a character, especially with like the scholarship stuff and him not being able to stay in Dublin for the summer and having to go back to get a job. I found all of that really endearing, but I think Marianne I would have found more endearing if her family problems had been explained a little bit more. I feel like there was zero context given to why her mother and brother were just so awful to her. We don't get much about her father, and it's all just like sort of these random little scenes thrown in and sort of references to her family situation, but it's never really explained. And I feel like Conversations with Friends actually did this better, where the main character, we see like very tactile moments with her father and sort of his own mental health issues and the way that that's affecting her life. And so although she was again this like privileged white girl who, you know, had her rent paid for her and everything, I felt for her on like a psychological level with what she was dealing with emotionally. Honestly, to me, this felt like a hetero and much worse version of Conversations with Friends. Personally, at least I thought so, because there's a lot of similarities between Marianne and also the main character in Conversations with Friends. I forget her name now, but there's this like weird little submissive, needy girl trope going on, and this idea of wanting to be submissive in bed, which I found, I mean, like, power to those who like that, but I found it very weird to read about. I feel like it made more sense in Conversations with Friends because I understood her psyche a little bit more, and also we're seeing her mind sort of deteriorate over the course of the book and sort of her relationships as well. But I feel like with this book, nothing made sense. No one had reasons for what they were doing. This book is meant to be sort of that like will they, won't they get together type of situation, but every time that they don't end up together or they break up or they're not talking to each other anymore, it's because of some stupid misunderstanding that they're just being stupid. And I didn't find that compelling at all. I thought it was really dumb. And I just thought that there had to be like something more to this book. I know part of this book is meant to sort of highlight the class differences between the two main characters, but honestly, I felt like that was part of the weakest part of the book. It was sort of thrown in there every now and then, but not explored in a really significant or deep way. And I found it interesting that the power dynamic between them changes between high school and university, and how Connell has more of the power when they're in high school, and then Marianne has more of the power when they're in university. I found that interesting at least, but I found Colin super insufferable and like a terrible person at the beginning for using Marianne for sex in high school. And then I found Marianne to be just really insufferable and annoying. And I really did not like the way that she sort of pinned her identity on Connell and her happiness on Connell. Part of what I hated about the ending was that it's basically just Connell saving her from her brother at the end and from her family. And they sort of have this happily ever after type situation. And he magically gets into an MFA, even though we hear nothing about his writing before that, except for like that one thing that he submits and is like published without editing. Like apparently he's just an amazing writer. And at the end of it, Marianne is just sort of like happy to be super submissive and happy to pin her happiness on him and not really grow and change in her own significant way. Like I feel like she had zero character growth or development in what she was doing with her life. And even at the end, Connell like sort of gives into this submissive thing that she likes to do and learns how to be dominating when they're having sex, and I just found it so weird. Also, like the unnecessary sex scenes, I just found them so weird and annoying. I feel like in Conversations with Friends, the sex scenes made sense like when they happened, and although there was like a lot, it wasn't as much as this one, I feel like. And I feel like they just made more sense for the story and the plot and what was going on. Another thing related to my issues with the book being like about this privileged white girl is also just like the general vibe of white privilege that permeates the book. Obviously there's like no people of color in this book. I understand it's set in Dublin and in Ireland, but there's also like this aspect which I always find really strange when it's a party setting scene and there's just a bunch of white people talking about like world issues and war and famine and like poverty and everything, and it's meant to show them as like worldly people and caring about issues, but really just seems like they're talking about these things for entertainment, and it just rubs me the wrong way. I never liked it in Conversations with Friends, and I didn't like it in this book, and it continued to bother me. And I feel like this is part of the reason why I don't pick up literary fiction by white authors, because this feels like a continuous issue. So overall, I basically hated this book. I found both the main characters insufferable. I did not like their relationship. I hated all the miscommunication, and I didn't find anything really profound about this book. I think in conversations with friends, there was a lot of lines that I found really compelling. I underlined a lot of them. I was fascinated by the main character's psychological state and the way that she couldn't let go of this sort of toxic relationship. And also I loved the partly queer aspect to the story and how the main character was bisexual. And I loved her relationship with Bobby as well. But this book was just uncompelling and unremarkable in the biggest way. And I honestly don't understand why it is hyped, and that will be the biggest mystery of my life. I tried to talk to more people in my real life who like have read this, and they sort of saw my point. There's other people I knew who didn't really like this one or didn't understand the hype. So overall, I'm just disappointed. Like, this was a waste of time, personally, I felt like, and I don't feel like I gained anything from it or learned anything from it. And yeah, that's how I'm feeling. Conversations with Friends, at least, I quite enjoyed, and I feel like there were aspects of it that like hit me, and I felt it. But this one was just a load of crap. So that's where we're at. I know you're all gonna come at me for dragging your fade, and I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel. We can all have different opinions about books. So with that said, I'm moving on to Beautiful World, Where Are You? And I'm very, very scared that this is gonna be very, very similar. I believe this involves like 4 different characters, and it doesn't seem similar to either of the previous books in terms of plot, but we'll see. I'm feeling kind of apprehensive about going into this after the shit show that was Normal People. Hello friends, we're back again, and now I'm here to tell you about my thoughts on Beautiful World, Where Are You? I have a lot of thoughts, and you're probably not gonna like them. So this is the 3rd Sally Rooney book that I've picked up, and you've already seen that I partially sort of loved Conversations with Friends, had some issues with it, but mostly enjoyed it. Normal People, on the other hand, I absolutely hated, really did not see the hype, and felt like it was a waste of time. And unfortunately for this video, which I thought was gonna go a lot differently, I honestly went into this video thinking I'm gonna love these books. People love them so much. People love this author so much. I'm not usually a literary fiction reader, but maybe I'll love her books and they'll hit me in a profound way. And honestly, after reading Conversations with Friends, I was like, okay, like I can see this going well still. I may not love the other ones, but I'll still enjoy them. No. I straight up DNF'd this book because I could not take it anymore. This is how far I got. You can see I've been like tabbing stuff. So I was like engaging with the text. I did listen to this one on an audiobook. I think the audiobook was fantastic if you are gonna pick it up, because I feel like it added to the characters a little bit more. But honestly, I got, I think, 100 pages, yeah, about 100 pages from the end, and I was like, I literally cannot take this. I was about 230 pages in. And honestly, this was just a hot pile of garbage. It was very similar to Normal People in the sense that like nothing was happening. There were all these weird misunderstandings. There was all these constant sex scenes that just made zero sense. And it was overall a terrible experience reading it. I did start out enjoying it and liking it and being intrigued in the characters. But as I went on and slowly read more, I progressively started to hate it more and was not enjoying myself, and was honestly reading at like 11 p.m. and thinking either I could read the next 100 pages of this book and continuously hate life and reading this, or I could stop now, DNF this book, read a summary, and find out the ending, and then give you guys my review. So that's what I did. I stopped reading at like 11:30 last night because I was so over the situation. I did read a summary about the ending of the book, which reaffirmed my thoughts on the rest of the book because it was not a great ending either. And overall, I just, again, hated the characters, found them insufferable. I found their relationships really weird, and I didn't find them compelling at all. At least with Conversations with Friends, I found the affair to be actually quite compelling and interesting, and the character dynamics also really interesting. But this one, again, I hated it. Honestly, I didn't see the point in the whole story, and it felt like Sally Rooney was sort of embedding her own ideas about various topics and just like shoving them down your throat. So part of the structure of this book is that it's told from 2 different perspectives, so Alice and Eileen. Alice is a writer, Eileen, I forget what she does. I think she's like a magazine editor, I might be wrong, but she's getting over this like breakup with her long-term boyfriend. So these are the 2 main characters. They're really good friends. They are currently separated. They're not in the same place at least. And each chapter is from one of their perspectives, and then it's also followed up by a email that they're writing to the other person. So it'll go like Alice's chapter, and then Alice's email to Eileen, and then Eileen's chapter, and then Eileen's email to Alice. So I found that structure to be really interesting, and initially I really loved that sort of setup and seeing their thoughts and like their exchanges between the characters, because they're both having these two separate stories going on, and then you're seeing them react to each other's stories and also tell each other about their stories and seeing their own personal interactions during the emails. But as we got further, I started to realize why Sally Rooney had these emails happening in the book, because basically she uses those emails for the two characters who are basically like copies of herself, especially Alice, who is like a literary fiction writer, and like they talk about the whole, is it interesting to even read about regular normal day stuff, and like, yeah, obviously people connect to that and all of that, and we care about like relationships and breakups and that kind of thing in our books. But then she also uses these emails to stage these pretentious discussions of very abstract concepts or topics, or like, you know, very relevant topics also, and just sort of shove her opinion about it down your throat, which I absolutely hated. Like, they go into these long paragraphs discussing a topic, and I'm like, I literally do not care. This is not adding to the story. This is not adding to the character. You're just using this space to tell us what you think about this topic, which, fine for a nonfiction book, but for a fiction novel, I feel like, please keep it out. And also none of it added to the plot, so it was like really frustrating to just like slog through multiple pages of these ridiculous topics. She also like discusses the topic of like separating the author from the art, which is like a topic that is like so over discussed, I feel like, especially from like the author's perspective. But in our day and age, like, the author is tied to the art because they make money off the art, especially if they are an awful person, regardless of what the art they're putting out. So yeah, all of that I really hated. Found it super boring as well. It was just endless pages, and I was flipping through them and like waiting for this discussion to end that had nothing to do with the plot or characters. And it also felt like a lot of info dumping as well. And this is something that she does in like the narrative part of the books as well. She just info dumps like a bunch of details about the characters. Like, I think the Eileen chapter just like starts off with like telling us her whole life story. And I'm like, I didn't really need that. You could have done a better version of that and let us like actually learn about the character rather than just dumping a bunch of information about her. So that personally I didn't like. And then I really didn't like the two different relationships going on. So there's Alice and Felix, and then there's Simon and Eileen. And I really did not like Eileen and Simon, because it again turns into this normal people sort of submissive girl, needy girl trope, and this like dominating guy trope that she wanted to make happen between these characters, and sort of the girl wants to make happen in the relationship. And then there's like this whole daddy princess dynamic that they've got going on, which I was like, gag. And I just hated reading it. And then they have like weird phone sex in one scene, like the first scene that they have together, it's like them having phone sex. And I was like, I didn't really need this. This didn't really add to the book or the characters or to the themes or anything. It was just weird. It was slightly funny, but also weird. And then the characters also did these like really weird things. And like, again, we had like the ridiculous misunderstandings and reasons for not being together, but also they would have these like random declarations of love that would be met with weird reactions. And then again, we also had these really long unnecessary sex scenes. This had all of the problems that I hated from normal people in it again, which just drove me over a wall, which was another reason why I didn't want to finish this. And I feel like it just lacked the depth that Conversations with Friends had. I feel like that book feels like it was written by a totally different person. It was so profound and had so many great discussions and a really interesting main character and like interesting dynamics between the four main characters. This one and normal people, I feel like, lack that depth. I feel like the execution was so much better on Conversations with Friends than either of these books. Another thing I found annoying was like the weird text conversations between these characters. There's a lot of texting in this book. Also, Normal People has a lot of emailing, and Conversations with Friends also has a lot of emailing, but I liked the emails in Conversations with Friends because they felt like dialogue, and it also was very natural, at least in my opinion. I felt like I learned a lot about the characters, whereas these ones just felt like unnecessary additions to the story and didn't really tell me much about the characters. It just felt like she was filling words rather than actually conveying anything about the characters. And I think another thing that I'm sort of realizing after reading all three of the books is that Conversations with Friends is from one perspective, and I feel like she did that well. She encompassed that character's psychological state very well, and she was compelling to follow, and there was like a plot to this book. This one doubles the characters and makes them both insufferable, and then this one quadruples them and makes them even more insufferable. And I was just like, why did you do this to yourself? I feel like she could have written one character and one central story and been okay with it. I feel like Normal People, even if it had been from one of the characters' perspectives rather than both, I would have maybe enjoyed it more because she would have delved more into that specific character. I feel like there just wasn't enough depth to any of the characters. And then the final thing I want to say about Beautiful World, Where Are You? Because I've been sort of talking about all three books in connection, but the last thing I want to say about this book in specific is that it did this really, really weird thing, which I think was like a creative call on her part, which I hated, was that she would have these sections of the book where it would be one scene that took place over like a single paragraph, but the paragraph would run across multiple pages. So this chapter, 23, is literally one paragraph continuously. There are no breaks at all. And there's dialogue happening, there's like other actions going on, there are different characters coming in and out, but literally for like, I'm not even kidding, 8 or 9 pages, it's just one giant block of text that is supposed to be a paragraph and supposed to be the chapter. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? I understood it when it was like an email or something, but for the actual narrative part, I was like, what the hell is going on? It was so annoying to read through that and watch on the page. And it also just made for a really confusing experience. And I was honestly just so bored of the story at that point that I was like, I don't even care, like, to figure out the artistic reason behind this, if there was one. And overall, I just hated it. So personally, at the end of all of this, after reading all three of these books and sort of ranting about Beautiful World, Where Are You? And I'm sorry for that. You know, power to you if you love this book, if you love normal people. I understand people can have different preferences. Personally, just did not like these. I did not see the hype, did not understand the hype for Sally Rooney, and was just overall really, really disappointed by at least Beautiful World, Where Are You? And normal people. I can honestly say with my whole heart that I really did enjoy Conversations with Friends, especially after reading the other two books. I'm like, wow, I actually really like this one in comparison. Especially when I was reading Normal People, I was thinking that. I was like, Conversations with Friends was actually really good in comparison to this. Like, I loved the character dynamics and I wanted to know more about them. And to this day, like, they sort of live in my head and I want to know more. And I'm still thinking about like what happened in the book. I just found it so fascinating. But these two books were just so boring and bad, and I didn't like the romances, I didn't like the characters, and I understand that Normal People, the two main characters, are supposed to be unlikable, but I think they were also just not interesting either. Like, I feel like they were trying to be interesting and doing a bunch of dramatic things to be interesting, but they weren't interesting. They were boring characters. They were insufferable and boring characters, which is why I both hated them and also didn't want to read a book about them. Like, there are characters I hate that I want to read a book about, but these were not those characters. So yes, that is the end of my rant. I'm gonna stop because I'll just keep going. But overall, this experiment turned out very different than what I thought it was gonna be. I went into this honestly expecting to like Sally Rooney and like the books, especially after all the hype. But having read all three, I can honestly say that I probably will never pick up another one of her books unless it's gonna blow me away the way that Conversations with Friends did. I honestly really enjoyed that book. It blew me away. There's so many scenes and quotes that I really enjoyed, and I'll be thinking about that book forever, and I'll be sort of recommending it as well, and I've already like recommended it in another video that I filmed. But the other two, to my grave, I will be saying that they're terrible and not recommending them. But I appreciate those of you who see the value in them, and maybe I'm missing the point here. Maybe I'm just not the target audience, because once again, I don't read literary fiction all that often, so I can see why I didn't like these in comparison to everything else I read. But yeah, I just didn't love them. So yeah, that's where we're at for this video. I hope you enjoyed this very ranty video, especially in the last 2/3 of the video. I honestly didn't expect this to happen, but here we are. So now I have some books that I hated for the year. Probably my 2 least favorite books of the entire year that I've read so far. But stay tuned. We might find other books that I don't like, which is very rare. I feel like I go into most books thinking I'm gonna love them, and I do end up at least marginally enjoying them. But these two were the outliers for the year. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on Sally Rooney, on all three of these books. Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you disagree? Feel free to defend Sally Rooney. I'm not gonna hold it against you, but I also won't agree with you, which is fine. We can have differing opinions on authors and books. But if you're like me and you know, you liked Conversations with Friends, but you hated the other two, or you had like similar-ish opinions on the things that I talked about in each book, let me know, because I would love to hear all of your thoughts. Thank you again. Go check out my Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and TikTok in the description down below if you want to get more regular updates on my reading, and I'll see you in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!